Right now, as we approach the end of 2025, there are specific actions you need to take before the calendar flips to 2026. You see, I have spent my entire life studying how wealth is built and how it is destroyed. And one of the most important lessons I have learned is that small decisions, compounded over time, create enormous differences in outcomes. The decisions you make about your 401k before December 31st are exactly these kinds of decisions. They seem minor right now. They do not feel urgent, but 30 years from now, they can mean the difference between a comfortable retirement and financial stress in your golden years. I remember when I first started thinking seriously about retirement accounts. This was back in the 1950s, long before 401k plans even existed. Back then, most people had pensions. Their employers promised them a certain income in retirement, and that was that. You worked for 30 or 40 years, you retired, and the company took care of you. It was simple, it was secure, and it is almost completely gone now. The shift from pensions to 401k plans was sold to the American public as empowerment. You get to control your own retirement destiny. You get to choose your own investments. You get to decide how much to save. And that all sounds wonderful until you realize that most people have no idea how to invest, understanding of fees, and no ability to accurately predict how much they will need in retirement. This is not a criticism of ordinary people. Why should they know these things? They have jobs, they have families, they have lives to live. Expecting everyone to become an investment expert just to retire comfortably is absurd. But that is the system we have created, and so we have to work within it. And working within it means understanding the rules, understanding the opportunities, and most importantly, understanding the deadlines. December 31st is not arbitrary. It is the end of the tax year, and your 401k is fundamentally a tax-advantaged account. Everything about how it works is connected to the tax code, and there are specific things you can do before the end of the tax year that you cannot do afterward. Miss these deadlines, and you will have to wait another full year for another opportunity. In some cases, you will miss the opportunity entirely. The first thing you need to understand is contribution limits. For 2025, you can contribute up to $23,000 to your 401k if you are under 50 years old. If you are 50 or older, you can contribute an additional $7,500 as a catch-up contribution, bringing your total to $30,500. These limits are set by Congress, and they change periodically to account for inflation. Now, here is what most people do not realize. These contribution limits are based on the calendar year, not on when you decide to start contributing. If you have not been maximizing your contributions throughout the year, you cannot go back and make up for lost time next year. The opportunity to contribute for 2025 ends on December 31st, and it is gone forever. I know what you are thinking, Warren. I cannot afford to max out my 401k. I have bills to pay. I have a mortgage. I have kids to feed. I understand that completely. But let me ask you this. Can you afford not to? Because every dollar you fail to contribute to your 401k is a dollar that could have grown tax deferred for decades. It is a dollar that could have compounded into $5 or $10 or $20 by the time you retire. It is a dollar that you will wish you had invested when you are 70 years old and wondering how you are going to pay your bills. I have always believed in living below your means, not because being cheap is virtuous, but because the gap between what you earn and what you spend is where wealth is created. That gap is what you invest. That gap is what compounds over time. That gap is what gives you options and security and freedom. And one of the best places to invest that gap is in your 401k. Especially if your employer offers matching contributions. The employer match is the closest thing to free money that exists in investing. If your employer matches 50 cents on every dollar you contribute up to 6% of your salary, that is an immediate 50% return on your investment. Show me another investment that guarantees 50% returns with zero risk. It does not exist. And yet, according to research, I have seen something like 25% of employees do not contribute enough to get the full employer match. They are literally leaving free money on the table. This blows my mind. If I walked up to you on the street and offered to give you $1,000 for every $2,000 you gave me, you would think I was crazy, but you would take the deal in a heartbeat. That is exactly what an employer match is, and people are turning it down because they do not think they can afford to save. What they do not realize is that they cannot afford not to save. But let me get specific about what you need to do before December 31st. First, check your year-to-date contributions. Log into your 401k account and see exactly how much you have contributed so far this year. Compare that to the maximum allowed contribution. If there is a gap and you can afford to close it even partially, you should seriously consider doing so. Now, I know that increasing your 401k contribution at the end of the year might be difficult. The holidays are expensive. You might have travel plans. You might have gifts to buy. But remember, we are talking about your future here. We are talking about the difference between working until you are 75 and retiring at 65. We are talking about the difference between financial stress and financial security in your old age. Here is a strategy that might help. Instead of thinking about the total amount you need to contribute, think about it in terms of your paycheck. If you get paid twice a month and there are 2 pay periods left in the year, you could increase your contribution percentage for just those 2 paychecks. It might mean tightening your belt a little in December, but January is right around the corner and you can adjust back to your normal contribution rate. Then the second thing you need to consider before December 31st is your investment allocation. This is where most people make enormous mistakes that cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars over their lifetime. They set up their 401k when they start their job, pick some investments that sound good or that their colleague recommended, and then never look at it again for 30 years. This is financial malpractice. Your investment allocation should change as you age, as markets change, as your personal circumstances change. What made sense when you were 25 and just starting your career makes no sense when you are 55 and approaching retirement. And the end of the year is a natural time to review and rebalance your portfolio. I see so many people with 401k portfolios that make no sense. They own 15 different mutual funds that all invest in the same things, creating the illusion of diversification without any actual diversification, or they have too much money in company stock, violating one of the most basic principles of investing by concentrating too much wealth in a single security, or they are paying outrageous fees for actively managed funds that consistently underperform simple index funds. Let me tell you what I think most people should do with their 401k. Keep it simple, very simple. If I were a typical employee with a typical 401k, I would put the vast majority of my money in a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. That is it. No complicated strategies, no trying to pick winning sectors, no paying high fees for active management that probably will not beat the market anyway. Just a simple low-cost index fund that owns a piece of America's largest companies. Now, I can already hear the objections, but Warren, what about diversification? What about international stocks? What about bonds? Listen, if you own the S&P 500, you own 500 of the largest companies in America. These companies do business all over the world. You are already diversified across sectors, across geographies, across business models. You do not need to make it more complicated than that. As you get older, yes, you should probably add some bonds to your portfolio. The old rule of thumb was that your bond allocation should equal your age. So if you are 60 years old, 60% bonds and 40% stocks. I think that is too conservative for most people given how long we are living now, but the principle is sound. As you approach retirement, you want to reduce the volatility in your portfolio because you have less time to recover from a major market decline. But here is what you absolutely must do before December 31st. Look at the expense ratios on the funds you own in your 401k. The expense ratio is the annual fee you pay to own the fund expressed as a percentage of your investment. If you own a fund with a 1% expense ratio, you are paying $1 per year for every $100 you have invested. That might not sound like much, but over 30 or 40 years, fees compound just like returns, except they compound against you instead of for you. A 1% annual fee can reduce your retirement account balance by 25 to 30% over a typical career. Think about that. 1/4 to 1/3 of your retirement savings gone just because you did not pay attention to fees. The good news is that most 401k plans now offer index funds with expense ratios below 0.1%. That is less than 1/10 of what actively managed funds typically charge. And study after study has shown that these low-cost index funds outperform the vast majority of actively managed funds over long time periods. So you are paying less and getting better results. This is what I call a no-brainer. Before December 31st, log into your 401k account, look at what you own, check the expense ratios, and if you are paying more than 0.2% on your stock funds, seriously consider switching to a lower-cost alternative. This one change could add tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars to your retirement account over your career. Now, let me talk about something that very few people understand, but that could be incredibly important depending on your situation. Roth conversions. If your 401k plan allows it, you might be able to convert some or all of your traditional 401k money to a Roth 401k. And if you are going to do this, you want to think about it before December 31st because it affects your taxes for the current year. Here is how it works. Traditional 401k contributions are made with pre-tax dollars. You get a tax deduction now. The money grows tax, deferred, and you pay taxes when you withdraw it in retirement. Roth 401k contributions are made with after-tax dollars. You get no tax deduction now, but the money grows tax-free and you pay no taxes when you withdraw it in retirement. Which is better? It depends on whether you think your tax rate will be higher now or in retirement. If you think you will be in a higher tax bracket in retirement, Roth contributions make sense. If you think you will be in a lower tax bracket in retirement, traditional contributions make sense. But here is what most people do not consider. Tax rates themselves might be higher in the future, regardless of your personal tax bracket. Think about it. We have massive government deficits. We have an aging population that will need Social Security and Medicare. We have infrastructure that needs rebuilding. Where is all that money going to come from? Taxes. And not just a little bit higher, potentially a lot higher. I do not know this for certain. Nobody does. But it is a real possibility that needs to be factored into your planning. This is why I think many people should be contributing to Roth accounts, or at least considering Roth conversions. Yes, you pay taxes now on the conversion, but if tax rates are significantly higher in 20 or 30 years, you will be very glad you paid taxes at today's rates instead of tomorrow's rates, and your withdrawals in retirement will be completely tax-free, giving you much more flexibility in managing your retirement income. But here is the critical point. If you are going to do a Roth conversion, you need to think carefully about the timing because the conversion counts as taxable income in the year you do it. Converting a large amount right at the end of the year could push you into a higher tax bracket or affect other aspects of your tax return. You might be better off spreading the conversion over multiple years to manage the tax impact. This is the kind of decision where it really pays to talk to a tax professional before December 31st. They can help you model out different scenarios and figure out what makes sense for your specific situation. I am a big believer in doing your own research and making your own decisions, but taxes are complicated enough that professional advice is usually worth the cost. Another thing to consider before your end is required minimum distributions, though this only applies if you are over 73 years old. Once you reach that age, the IRS requires you to start taking money out of your traditional 401k every year. The amount you must withdraw is based on your age and your account balance. And if you do not take the required distribution, the penalty is severe. 50% of the amount you were supposed to withdraw but did not. I mention this because I have seen people forget about their required minimum distribution until late December, and then they scramble to get it done before the deadline. Do not let this be you. If you are subject to required minimum distributions, make sure you have taken your distribution for 2025 before December 31st. There are no extensions, there are no excuses. The deadline is absolute. Now let me talk about something that affects people who are changing jobs or who have changed jobs in the past. Old 401k accounts. I cannot tell you how many people I have talked to who have 3 or 4 or even more old 401k accounts scattered around from previous employers. They left a job, they forgot about the 401k, and it is just sitting there, often in investments they do not understand, paying fees they do not know about. This is bad for several reasons. First, it is hard to have a coherent investment strategy when your retirement savings are spread across multiple accounts at different institutions. You might think you are diversified, but you could actually be concentrated in certain areas without realizing it because you are not looking at the big picture. Second, old 401k accounts often have higher fees than current accounts because employers negotiate better deals for current employees than for former employees. Before December 31st, you should seriously consider consolidating your old 401k accounts. You have several options. You can roll them into your current employer's 401k plan if the plan accepts rollovers. You can roll them into an IRA, which gives you much more investment flexibility and often lower fees, or in some cases you can leave them where they are, though I generally do not recommend this unless the old plan is exceptionally good. Rolling over a 401k is not difficult, but you have to do it correctly. The most important thing is to do a direct rollover where the money goes straight from your old 401k to your new 401k or IRA without you ever touching it. If you do an indirect rollover where they send you a check and you have to deposit it into your new account, you have 60 days to complete the rollover and they will withhold 20% for taxes. It gets complicated and creates unnecessary headaches. This is another area where the end of the year is a natural time to take action. You can clean up your financial life, consolidate your accounts, and start the new year with a much clearer picture of where you stand with your retirement savings. Plus, if there are any problems with the rollover, you will discover them while you are thinking about it, not 3 years from now when you have completely forgotten about it. Let me also address something that I know is on a lot of people's minds right now, 401k loans. Many 401k plans allow you to borrow money from your own account, typically up to $50,000 or 50% of your vested balance, whichever is less. And I know that during difficult financial times, this can seem like an attractive option. You are borrowing from yourself. You pay yourself back with interest. What could be wrong with that? The answer is quite a lot, actually. When you take money out of your 401k, even as a loan, that money is not invested and growing. You are missing out on the compound returns that money would have earned. Yes, you are paying yourself back with interest, but the interest rate on a 401k loan is typically much lower than what the stock market has historically returned. So you are trading higher potential returns for lower guaranteed returns. Even worse, if you leave your job for any reason while you have an outstanding 401k loan, the entire loan balance typically becomes due within 60 to 90 days. If you cannot pay it back, the loan is treated as a distribution. You will owe income taxes on the entire amount, plus a 10% early withdrawal penalty if you are under 59 and a half. What seemed like a convenient loan suddenly becomes a massive tax bill that could wreck your finances. If you currently have a 401k loan outstanding, before December 31st is a good time to think about whether you can pay it back early. Every dollar you pay back is a dollar that can start growing again in your retirement account. I understand that if you needed to borrow the money in the first place, you might not be in a position to pay it back early. But if your financial situation has improved, if you are getting a year-end bonus, if you have some extra cash available, paying down or paying off your 401k loan should be a top priority. Now, I want to talk about something that applies to people who own a lot of company stock in their 401k. This is common at large public companies that match employee contributions with company stock instead of cash. And I have to tell you, this is one of the riskiest things you can do with your retirement savings. That is my hope for everyone listening to this, that you will take these final weeks of 2025 to make the decisions that your future self will thank you for, that you will look at your 401k not as some abstract account that you will worry about later, but as the foundation of your financial future that deserves your attention and care right now. The clock is ticking. December 31st will be here before you know it, and once it passes, some of these opportunities will be gone until next year or gone forever. Do not let that happen. Take action now. Your future depends on this.